This is David Shedd of easternslopes.com, and today we're going to show you how to make a kayak cover for storing your kayak through the winter or whenever you're going to be storing it. As always, we've got our caffeine, first thing we need for anything we do because things never work out quite right. But making a kayak cover is really, it's a very easy thing to do, and you can certainly buy one for most kayaks, but they tend to be relatively expensive. And for some kayaks, they're very difficult to find. Both my wife and I use Pungo 140s from Wilderness Systems. They have a very large cockpit, and there's not a lot of options for them. So it makes sense to just make something, and it's a very, very easy process. You don't even need a lot of material. You need a sewing machine, and it doesn't have to be a very sophisticated one. This one is a $99 special from Walmart, of all places, and it works fine for something like this. You need some material, and you've got a lot of options. If you're going to be storing the kayak indoors, like inside your garage, it can be almost anything. If it's going to be outdoors, you want to have something that's pretty waterproof or at least very water resistant. And this is just a, again, inexpensive nylon material, not ripstop or anything like that, because it's not going to get any abuse. It's just going onto the kayak to sit there. And it's coated on the other side so that it's at least reasonably waterproof. And that's all you need for that. You need some sort of a marking pen, and you'll find out why in a few minutes when we go out to the kayak. You'll need a pair of scissors. Nothing special, Fiskars, Singers. I think this pair cost $4 or $5. Something reasonably sharp makes your life easy. And you need some sort of a cord, and ideally use shot cord, because this is going to go around the perimeter of the cover, and it's going to tighten it down onto your kayak, and it makes it easier to put it on if you have it already partially tightened down. But if you don't have any shot cord, you can use something, pretty much any nylon cord or anything of the sort. It really doesn't matter a whole heck of a lot. And the last thing, and again, this isn't something you absolutely have to have, but it makes your life easy, and you can pick them up at pretty much any sewing store, are cord stops. Almost all the outdoor gear you own probably has some of these on there, and it just allows you to, instead of tying things off, to just run the cord through it and pull it through. So those are the materials we need. And now we'll go out to the kayak and show you how to mark out and measure out for the cover. And then we'll come back in again and fire up the sewing machine and do some finger crossing. So here we are out at the kayak, and as you can see, this one has an incredibly long cockpit, which is why it's hard to find a cover for it. So what you do is it's pretty simple. This is a lot easier with two people, therefore we'll do it with one just to show you that it can be done this way. Cover the cockpit, and ideally get the fabric so that you're not going to waste all of it. You want to have an overlap at the front of around 3 inches. This isn't critical. You don't have to have exactly 3 inches or 2.5, 3.5, anything. And the same thing with the sides. You get that to stay where I want it to. Which, of course, the wind is now coming up to make my life difficult on doing this. Yep, life is like that. So, we'll just make our lives even easier by doing that, taking advantage of the bungee cords. You always have to make do. And what you're going to do is you can feel there's that edge along here, and you want to make the kayak cover fit that. So you pretty much just draw a line right around that edge. Now, I'm actually doing this the wrong way because it would make a lot more sense to do it on the underside where it wouldn't show, but I wasn't thinking when I was putting this one together and getting this ready for you, so we'll just go with it because, let's face it, it's going to be sitting out attached to the backside of my garage, and it's just not going to matter what it looks like. So, that is all marked out. Just double check it. There's a little bit of, I don't have it super, super tight, so I've got a little extra play, which I want. And that matches up nicely with the shape of the cockpit. And now, in to cut it. We're now back inside, and I've already cut this, cut the fabric off the excess because I didn't frankly think that you'd want to waste your time watching me sit there and snip, snip, snip with a pair of scissors. And on the sewing machine, I've got the buttonhole attachment, and if your machine doesn't have this, you might want to do things differently. One thing you can do, whether you like a sewing machine or not, is, again, at any sewing fabric place, you can buy a grommet maker and just punch holes and punch in grommets like you would with any tarp or anything of those sorts, and use that to run your cords through. But this is cheap and easy since I have to use the machine anyway. And with the buttonholer, you want to have a hole that's large enough that you can run a cord through it, but you don't want a huge hole. And if you watch any videos of professional seamstresses working with these things, they'll tell you to put a button in here, and this is chainsaw surgery, or chainsaw sewing. Singer has not approved this, although I can say that so far no sewing machines have been harmed in the making of this video. But I do things the easy way, which is I stick my thumb into this and basically set my gauge by putting the thumb in and moving that so it's about the width of my thumb, which means I'll have about a 3/4 inch opening when I finish my buttonhole. And you want the buttonhole to be on of that 3 inches of fabric you had, the first half somewhere, because what you're going to end up with is it rolled under like this, and then the cords will come out so that as you put this on, you can pull the cords from the outside, obviously, rather than from the inside. And you can make a buttonhole from the inside or the outside, doesn't matter. So the easiest way to do this is, if you'll see that, remember that black line we put on here? I put that black line right at the front of this foot. It will put my buttonhole just about where I want it. And these machines are just ridiculously easy as long as you remember how to use them. And remember to push, in this case, that little button, which I tend to forget. So here comes buttonhole 1. Luckily the machine's a lot smarter than I am, so it'll do a great job rather than fouling it up. Just get to the end, and it's done. Isn't that nice? You'd almost think I knew what I was doing. The machine does. Now, you need to have your 2 buttonholes. You can do a single buttonhole and have both cords come out. That's difficult. A lot easier to do it with 2. The easy way to do this is set that foot, again, the front of the foot back on that line, and just put this first buttonhole right along the edge. That means you're going to have a separation of about a 1/2 inch or so between the 2. And here we go again. Push the button, unlike me. Since I didn't push the button, what that means is I'm going to have sort of a clot of thread down at the bottom end here, and I don't care, because everything else about this is ugly. That should be too. You do end up, if you do that, with a doubled up thread, which is a total pain in the neck, and you have to sort of pull and rip to get the things out of the bobbin. And then pull, and that's both of them right there. Now you're going to want to, having made a mess like I did, just take your scissors and trim off extra thread. It's not in your way. And you can open up your buttonholes one of 2 ways. One is with a seam ripper, the other is with just sticking a knife in there. I do enough of this that I have a seam ripper, and actually the machine usually comes with one. And you literally, I got a nice pretty pink one. I thought that was more fun than having just a boring one. Get those out of the way. Just literally just reach in there and pop. And don't worry about whether you open it the entire way or not, because once you start pulling at it with a rope inside, you will it'll open itself up. But just get that. And you can see they're both. That one's not open quite enough to get the rope through. There. 2 open buttonholes. Now, if you're using this, you have to replace what's called the foot, the presser foot, which, give me a second. They make this so that even people like I, as I said, can do it. And pop that new one, the correct one on, reset my sewing machine to the right settings for straight stitch, and like I said, as you can tell from looking at it, sorry, coffee time, I am not a seamstress at all. I'm not good at this, and these machines make it so easy that it's almost impossible to mess it up. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to fold this, and I'm just going to sew so that I have a tube, and I'm going to sew that towards what's going to be the bottom side of the fabric. And again, no rocket science, it's not an exact measurement at all. Simply go for about 1.5 inches on each side. So there's about 1.5 inches across here. And if you want to be really serious about it, this is really the smart way to do it. Fold it over so that your buttonholes are where you want them to be, and then set that up. And if you aren't good with a sewing machine yourself, and I'm not, but I'm good enough to do this, you can get somebody else, I'm sure, to do it. This is one of those things that, like an awful lot of things in life, can be, you can talk a friend into doing it with beer and pizza, or anything of the sort, but find my, there. And then start sewing. And all I'm doing is just making a nice tube to hold the cord when we get around to putting it in there. See, I set that off. Anytime you're working with a sewing machine and you change something, make sure that the needle is in, because then you can rotate and move things around. I'm not going to make you watch this whole process because it'll take 5 or 10 minutes probably to get that done. And there's no reason to do that. But once I'm done with that, I'll run the cord into it. You can see how once you get going, this is how fast it is. It's just very, very simple. And again, remember, this is not going to be pretty, and it doesn't matter. If I really cared about something like this, I'd probably put some pins in it and make sure it stayed pretty. But it's covering a kayak. So I'll be back in a minute when we put the cord in. Okay, back again after the sewing is done, and it's a typically ugly job. One thing that's worth pointing out is because you're sewing around curves, if you're inexperienced with this, you'll end up with what are called darts, where you're literally folding you got more fabric on the outside of the curve than on the inside, so you have to fold the fabric, and the inside of your bag or cover will look a little bit like a Sharpei, and that's normal. So if that just in case that's the kind of thing that bothers you, if that's the kind of thing that bothers you, probably shouldn't be doing this. So now I just have to find, there we go, there's the holes. Arguably the most irritating part of this whole process is threading it, and always has been, whether it's you're fixing baseball gloves or bathing suits. But cable ties, they're a wonderful invention, and all you have to do is take a cable tie, clip the end off, and a little bit of electrical tape. If you don't have that, that's easy to get. And you have now something that will make it a whole lot easier to thread. Simply slide the point of the cable tie in, start pushing, and then you grab hold right where the cord and the cable tie are together, and then slide fabric along your tube, and then grab hold of it again, same thing all over again. A few strings there. And what used to be an incredibly tedious job and involved lots of, at least for me, swearing, now takes no time at all and is easy, and I'm not quite going to say fun, but it's not really all that far off when you think about how easy something that was miserable is. Sort of makes it fun. Now, the hardest part of that whole process will be at the end when I get around all the way around and then have to fish it through the opening. But even that's not exactly a difficult process, to say the least. Go. A lot of cord, a lot of fabric. So you get the picture here, and well, might as well finish it off. We're close enough to the end. All right, here it goes. Find that. Look at that. It went right out even without me trying. It's that easy. And now, back outside and let's see if it fits. All right, back outside with the completed cover, being blown around by the wind. And this is where you'll actually get to see, I'm sure, that working with a shock cord as opposed to this would be easier, because if this were shock corded, I'd tighten it down. This would be all stretchy, and I'd start by stretching it over and across and then snapping it over at the other end, almost like using a spray skirt. But without the shock cord, which I didn't have enough of, you just have to make it go on. And start at one end and get it over. You just have to get the cord down into the channel. The nice thing is, although it's a minor pain in the neck, this isn't something you're going to do very often. You're typically going to do it just about when you start the season and just about when you end the season. If you're going to use it a lot more often, definitely make sure to get the shock cord, because you don't end up fooling around like this. But slowly but surely, on it goes. With the emphasis on slowly. And there you have it. That cockpit can now spend the winter. The kayak will sit all winter long and be nice and dry and out, and not have a whole bunch of spiders or squirrels storing nuts or leaves or whatever else in it. And we'll be able to start the spring and have a clean kayak. Hope this has been useful to you, and enjoy making your own cover.